Today's episode is brought to you by DeliverFund, crushing evil in 2025 and beyond. Look down in the show notes for more information. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, we're back at it. How do you stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos? What are your foundations? What are the things in life that when life gets weird, when life gets crazy, you're able to take a moment to get perspective and to make better decisions? Better decisions that impact our relationships, better decisions that impact you at work in your profession, better decisions that impact you internally. I mean, this really comes down, I don't know about you, but my conduct is something that impacts me because I have a perception of the character that I want to project, right? I have these boundaries in life, and sometimes when life gets crazy and I get carried away, I'm not happy with the way I respond. And at the foundation, you've heard me talk about this here on the podcast, at the foundation of me showing up better in these areas has come my sleep. I am stingy with my sleep. And so I was so excited about today's guest, Dr. Leah Kaylor, coming on the show. She is a psychologist. She's, I think, an expert on sleep. Everything we talked about is in line with what I know to be true. And I think her training eclipses what I know. You know, mine's from my experience. I mean, I've read books and I've listened to podcasts, but I haven't had formal training in this. It has been my experience, the experience of people that I know and that I've listened to, and then the self-education that I've received. And Dr. Kaylor has gone to school, has worked with veterans, has worked with first responders in the area of mental and physical health, and specifically the impact that sleep has on our brains and on our bodies. She has a book coming out here in the next couple of weeks titled If Sleep Were a Drug. If Sleep Were a Drug. And here's the good news, folks. This one doesn't have any negative side effects, sleep, and it's free. It may cost you some money to double down and have better sleep hygiene, but ultimately it's free. You don't have to pay for sleep. You get to do it for free, hopefully every single day, folks. So I'm excited for you to hear from Dr. Kaylor. We had a remarkable conversation that really got into not just kind of her background, but towards the end of the podcast, we really get into what are some of the things that all of us can do to to supercharge our sleep. So listen to this episode all the way through so you can get those great takeaways. But before we get into this interview, folks, I want to talk about Service Peace Warriors. Service Peace Warriors is a 501c3 nonprofit that's dedicated to our nation's heroes, the men and women returning from war with war-related physical injuries or mental health injuries. Service Peace Warriors has their back. They're raising all the money. They're training both the service animal and the veteran, and they're equipping veterans with the healing power of a service animal. And then during COVID, they took it a step further by starting Maddox Dog Training Academy. And they used the money from the for-profit Maddox to further fund Service Peace Warriors and then also to equip first responders with service animals as well. Folks, I hope you've checked them out before. If not, sometime today, look down in the show notes, servicepeacewarriors.org. Learn more about what they're doing. With that, let's get into this interview with Dr. Kaylor. Dr. Leah Kaylor, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. I'm excited as well. For the folks that are just listening on the audio version, they don't see the really cool things you have. Yes, the top secret, like within the first responder, especially the military world, that just draws us in. So I'm excited to get to the fact that good sleep shouldn't be top secret here in a little bit. Hey, for folks that haven't heard your name or your voice before, Dr. Kaylor, if you could give us a brief introduction of who you are.
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. I'm a licensed clinical and prescribing psychologist. I have been the FBI sleep expert for the past over 5 years now, but I specialize in sleep, in trauma. So I'm certified in EMDR and Brainspotting. And I also prescribe medications, which is kind of a cool, unique thing that a lot of psychologists don't have the ability to do. And I would say before coming to the FBI, which one thing I'll mention is that even though I am an FBI employee, everything that I'm going to share here today are my own thoughts, opinions, beliefs, and the FBI is not sponsoring or endorsing this particular podcast. But I would say before I got to the FBI and stepped into what I've stepped into, in the best way possible, I mean, is that I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center, and that's where it all started as far as sleep and
Mm.
being in their sleep clinic and learning how to treat nightmares and obstructive sleep apnea and just teaching people general sleep hygiene. So I've been on this mission, if you will, to make sure that people are getting the best possible quality sleep, good information, and that has brought me to where I am today, which today we're speaking, it's the summer of 2025, and my book, which is called If Sleep Were a Drug, is going to drop in October of 2025. So it's very exciting, and I just think it's so important for people to get information about sleep because it's the one thing that we overlook more than anything else, in my opinion.
Oh, completely. I mean, I'm an Air Force veteran,
Yep.
being a cop for almost 20 years, civilian police officer for almost 20 years. I I acted like sleep wasn't important.
Yep.
If you I wouldn't have said that with my words, but if you looked at my actions, I prioritize so much in my life above sleep.
Hmm.
I didn't understand
And most people
what
don't.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
What got you into it? Like did you growing up, were you just like this person that just like had great sleep hygiene and you slept, 7 to 8 hours every
No.
night? Like what kind of got you into this field?
I think growing up, like if we're talking childhood, I think that I was a good sleeper, but then I don't think that I ever placed much importance or much thought beyond I sleep every night, like this is what I do. But whenever I got to college, things got off the rails a little bit. I went to college as a collegiate gymnast, and so I would take the earliest morning classes possible because I'm definitely an early bird. And I would go to those classes, I would go to the library, I would go to lunch, and then I would take like what I thought was a great idea, like this like 3 hour nap in the afternoon. And then I would go to gymnastics practice, which is traditionally very long. It's normally at least 4 hours. And then I would go to dinner and maybe the library to study some more. And then it would be time to go to bed. And I'd be like, wide
I'm not
awake.
tired.
I'm not tired and I'm not sure what's wrong. And I need to figure out like what the problem is and like looking for solutions and looking for over the counter stuff. And, looking back, it's laughable. I know exactly what the problem is, but Leah in college didn't know. And so I would say that I was just a poor sleeper whenever it came to that. And then I would say once I retired from gymnastics, because gymnastics is kind of like dog years and I'm the crypt keeper now, I went to graduate school and it was mentally challenging, but it wasn't nearly as physically challenging as it was. And I got out of the habit of the naps. And then I did my PhD, and then it was time for my residency. And that's where I got into sleep, but basically on accident, because when you're on your residency year, all of the interns and all of the postdocs get together, and nobody's leaving that room until everyone is happy and everyone has all the rotations that they need to like graduate and finish. So there were a few rotations that I vividly remember like wanting, and I'm not leaving there until I get like these two, but everything else, whatever, I'm fine, I'm flexible.
Yeah.
And so I don't recall if sleep was one of the ones that I wanted or that I asked for, but looking back on it now, that was 2018. I couldn't be more grateful to have had the opportunity to go and to see what a problem sleep was for our veterans and for our active duty, and to learn that yes, we can treat nightmares and we can help people who are struggling with obstructive sleep apnea. And there are ways to just improve your sleep with basic sleep hygiene. And so I think that that was such a transformative experience. And then I immediately came to the FBI. That was my first like real job, if you will. And my supervisor in like the first week was like, okay, Leah, so what's going to be your thing? And I said, well, I just got off of a sleep rotation. How about we do sleep? Because everybody can relate to having a crap night's sleep, whether you have a new baby, your pet needs to be let out in the middle of the night, you've got pain, whatever. Everyone can relate to that without stigma. And then once I show you that I'm not scary and that I'm not Dr. Freud and make you like lay on my couch and tell you about my childhood, that maybe you'll open up and we can work on some other things too. And so that's how it kind of unfolded. And it has just grown and grown and grown way more than I ever anticipated, to the point where now there's a book. It's going to be released very soon.
Yeah. What was the name of the book again? I didn't write that down.
If sleep were a drug.
Oh, I like that.
I do too. Well, we had another title, just a quick little funny story. We had another title, and like I got so into it and I did a ton of podcasts and I told everyone what the title was going to be. And then lo and behold, we find out that someone else is using that title, and that individual has like their cover is them standing in a power pose on the front of the cover. And I'm like, oh Lord, if someone hears about the FBI sleep doctor put out a book, they're definitely going to think it's this dude and not me. So we got to change it. We have to change everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So is life sometimes, right? You have to be flexible and adjust. And
But I'm happy with it. I'm actually even more happy with this title. So if sleep were a drug, no prescription required.
yeah, totally. Right. I look at it as this, everyone wants a trip or a tip or a trick. I teach a leadership
Hmm.
class for the state of Washington. And on day one, we ask the students, what are you wanting to get out of this class for the next 40 hours?
Yeah.
And people, one of the, kind of the sayings people say is, I want more tools for my toolbox, which I love. I love the saying. I love
Yeah.
the idea.
Hmm.
And I see this as the super tool.
Yes.
I see this, that if we can get our mind around this within the first responder, within the military community, and really the
Hmm.
general population,
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
if we recognize what actually is happening while we sleep,
Hmm.
what is happening to our brain and our body, and recognize how we can supercharge our day and be more productive and all of these things that we care about. Um, boy, like if we all realize that, I think we'd be putting a ton of attention into our sleep hygiene. But right now, I still think it's in its infancy. I mean, there's tons of information out there because of podcasts and the internet, right? Like the information is accessible to everyone,
Hmm.
but we still don't live like it. Do you have an opinion, just from, and you can speak from your personal opinion, from your professional experience? Why are we still approaching sleep like it's, we can just get it once we die?
So that is how I start the book of, especially, so this particular book, because I've been working my entire career with law enforcement, with military, with first responders, that this book is written for those individuals. Anybody could pick it up because sleep hygiene is sleep hygiene, but my examples and everything are through the lens of first responders. But nonetheless, I start off the book with, yeah, I'll sleep when I'm dead, and this attitude that we have about that's when I'll get my sleep, that's when I'll get my rest. And we need to change the narrative, because when you do figure out how incredible sleep is for your brain and body, then maybe you will change things up. And that's what it's really all about. Is so I start with, how do we change the narrative? And then I'm not above scaring people. And that's what I really like to do, is just throw out some scary statistics, get people in a place where they're starting to think about change. Because as a psychologist, that's a lot of what I do, is helping people get to a place where they're open to change, that they're ready to change. And that's how I think about this book. Like if we're thinking about the stages of change as far as like pre-contemplation and contemplation and action and maintenance, you may be in a state, and I imagine that this is how a lot of the world is in this pre-contemplation of like, yeah, like I know sleep is important, but whatever. And then when I throw these scary statistics at you and I give you this information that's going to be in the first like chapter or first half of the book, then I think I move you into the contemplation stage where you're like, oh, well, now I can't unknow this. Shit. Thanks a lot. And then I'm trying to move you into action with the next stage of the book, with just a lot of sleep hygiene. And I love science, and I think it's so important to explain the science behind these things. And then moving towards almost like a troubleshooting piece of the manual. Like if you're having nightmares, here's what we can do. If you're up in the middle of the night and you don't know what to do, here's what we can do. So I'm trying to take people, because I 100% agree with you, of yeah, sleep is important, whatever, to like, oh, actually it's important and here's how I'm going to act on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I was literally just in like an hour ago in a conversation with someone, and we were talking about the value we can equip people with all of this information and ground it in science, but there's some value in people tripping over the truth themselves. And I'm totally
Absolutely.
stealing that from a book written by, I think it was Chip and Dan Heath, and I can't remember the title, but they talk about the value. If we can get people to trip over the truth,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have that aha moment. And that's where this stuff actually sticks.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with the book is, okay, so you might think sleep when you're dead. Well, if you continue to neglect sleep, you'll get there a lot quicker. And here's how.
Yeah. And it's going to be miserable, folks. That's the thing. If some people, I don't care if I die young, I don't want those years. Okay, here's the deal, folks. However many years you have, wouldn't you rather them be in a clear head where you're not walking around in a fog and your body's falling apart? I mean, like the best health insurance we can have is taking care of this one body we have.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
yeah,
It's just, it's such a challenge getting people to take sleep seriously. But I also think what you're describing is that people don't remember what it's like to feel good or to not feel pain or to not be moody or whatever the case may be. Like, I think that maybe it's been so long because we've been neglecting sleep for so long that we don't remember what it's like to be that person or to be in that state. And that's a huge problem as well.
yeah, totally. How would you work with folks within the VA? And again, I know you can't like go into any specific details, but like
Yeah.
generally, how would you help them? And I know you couldn't do it all the time because I'm a veteran and we're kind of a crusty group to
Crusty,
work with.
dusty
Yes.
population. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, if we don't
I'm
like
attracted
you,
to those folks.
if we don't like you, I was at a PTSD recovery center and everyone, all the staff there had just been doing a great job taking care of me and the other clients. And I didn't like something my clinician said one
Mhm.
day and kind of felt backed into a corner. And I just blew up, not like screaming and yelling, but I got all big and huffy and puffy and I marched away from her. And in
Mhm.
reality, she was really trying to help me. But I just know that with us veterans, like and
Mhm.
first responders, we can be that way. How
Yes.
how would you try to, whether you use the analogy, lead a horse to water, whether you use this analogy of getting them to trip over the truth, what are some of the kind of approaches you use to help us have our own aha moment? Like, oh my gosh, this sleep thing is super important.
I think that it's not necessarily me. I think it's a system as a whole. So I'm thinking of one person in particular who I worked with, specifically on nightmares. So he was having recurrent nightmares night after night after night. And a lot of people, and I imagine a lot of listeners right now, maybe don't know that you can treat nightmares, especially the ones that are recurring. We absolutely can, and we have a lot of success with it. So this individual was having nightmares every single night to the point where he had gone to the emergency room more than once because he thought he was having some type of cardiac event, like just to the point where he is so incredibly worked up. His adrenaline and cortisol are through the roof. And so it's the VA, love it or hate it, working as a system and finding this person coming to the emergency department more than once that eventually gets connected to the sleep clinic within the VA and then eventually gets connected to me and then we start working. So I think that a lot of people, whether it's at the VA or whether it's in my current position, a lot of people have had such poor luck or such struggles, whether it's with trauma or sleep, and they go hand in hand, that eventually by the time they get to me, they're like, I don't really care what you do. I just want to feel better.
Mm.
And I'm very good at straight talk. Like, let's get into it. If you want to hear the science, fantastic. I'll tell you. If you want me to rip the band-aid off when we get started, let's do it. And so that's how I approach a lot of the people that I work with. And that seems to be a pretty good approach.
I think veterans and first responders appreciate that. There's folk like I really do enjoy the
Let's just jump
science.
in.
When you give me the background on it, that does help me just from the prefrontal cortex,
And some people
area.
like it and some people don't. And I
But
give them the option.
yep, giving us the option because what you're doing is you're putting control back in our hands and in those professions, you control situations to make them feel safe and secure.
Mhm.
And when you are out of control due to nightmares and lack of sleep and post-traumatic stress and all of this stuff, it's pretty. You feel weak. I felt weak. Let me speak for
Yeah.
I felt weak, and once
Probably
I
feeling
started
helpless and hopeless.
helpless, really good descriptors, yes,
Mhm.
and I like that. I like it being a straight talker
Mhm.
and giving us a couple options. I think is powerful for us to feel powerful again, to feel empowered.
And I think a key piece of that too is okay, well, if you're not ready now, like you heard me maybe on a webinar, you heard me on a podcast, someone was talking about my book. Okay, well, if you're not ready now, that's okay. And that's a big piece of psychology too, right? Is like, you know where to find me, you know where to find this information. I'll be here when you're
Yeah.
ready.
So you did the work with the VA, it sounds like during your
Hmm.
schooling. Is that
Yeah, my
correct?
very last year of my PhD was being at the VA. Yes.
Love it. And then you get hired at the FBI. Like, of all things, why did you even apply at the FBI coming out of school? Hey, folks, a short break in the episode to spotlight a couple organizations. This episode of the Gravity Podcast is brought to you by DeliverFund, a nonprofit organization that equips law enforcement officers and ultimately prosecutors with cutting edge tools, training, and intelligence to fight human trafficking. And here's the best part: these resources are provided completely free of charge to those on the front line. DeliverFund's mission is simple, folks, but it's powerful. They give our nation's protectors the advantage they need to find and stop traffickers and ultimately to rescue victims faster. They operate on donor support, which means their life-saving work is only possible because of people who believe in their cause, people like me, and people I hope like you as well. Jamie and I have been financially supporting DeliverFund for almost 2 years now, and it was because we believe in their mission, the people they have on their team, and ultimately the results that they're making for people here in our country. If you're in law enforcement or if you're a prosecutor, I encourage you to reach out to DeliverFund so that you can learn more about these resources. Again, they're totally free to you. You can either just Google search them or you can look down in the show notes to learn more. And folks, if you're listening to this and you want to join a worthy cause, strongly recommend you dig more into them. I think you're going to fall in love with what they're doing. Again, look down in the show notes for a link. This episode is also brought to you by First Responder Health and Wellness, a telemedicine provider built specifically for those who serve. You know, as a first responder, sleep is everything. And like many of you, I've struggled with this. That's why I started using their supplement lines. And since adding this to my overall sleep routine, I've seen a noticeable improvement, both in my sleep quality and then also in the way I feel in the morning, my recovery. And it's because they get it, folks. It's because they get it. They've lived it. And whether it's quality supplements or if you're looking for a new primary care provider, First Responder Health and Wellness is here to keep both you and the first responder families mission ready. And here's a bonus, folks. Gravity Podcast listeners get 15% off of supplements at checkout by using the code GRAVITY15. Folks, learn more. Look down in the show notes or visit firstresponderhealth.net and really take your wellness into your own hands. With that, folks, let's get back into this episode.
I always knew that I wanted to do some type of forensics. So my mom works in a maximum security all male prison. She's a dental hygienist there. And so as a undergrad, I had to do a shadowing experience. And so I got hooked up with the psychiatrist and the psychologist, and I spent 6 weeks there just following them around. And I've never seen such serious mental illness in my entire life, which was very eye-opening, very interesting, but also it was a wonderful experience. And then I learned what I didn't want to do. And I
Okay.
felt like such a failure after that because I was thinking like, oh, I want to work in a prison. This sounds amazing. And then after the 6 weeks, I was like, holy shit, my anxiety is so incredibly high. Like, there's no way I can sustain a career in this. Like, absolutely not. Wonderful experience. But I felt like a failure in that, like, oh, well, I can't hack it in prison,
Oh, I see
call
what
it
you're
what you
saying.
want. And
Yeah.
so I just felt like, man, I thought that this was going to be my career. Like, what the heck? So I ended up going to John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City for my master's. And instead of doing offender work, which was what I did in the prison, then I started to get a little bit more specialized. So at John Jay, I was looking for a mentor. I needed to do a thesis. And I really wanted to work with a researcher who did serial killers. His lab was full. He told me no. So I ended up in the sex offender research lab, and I just stumbled into it. I really enjoyed it. We did some really, really good, interesting work. And I thought that was going to be my career. And it's time for me to figure something out. So I decide that I'm going to get my PhD, and what I'll do instead is I'll do a little bit of work on the other side, in that I had opportunities to work with people who had been victims of sexual abuse, whether that
Yeah.
was in childhood, whether that was in adulthood. So that's where I got a ton of very high quality trauma training in my PhD program. And while I'm in my PhD program, I'm still getting emails from John Jay. Like, I still have that email address, I'm still checking it. And they say, hey, the FBI is looking for interns. Like, are you interested? I'm like, of course I am. So I just throw my hat in the ring, and I do the interview, and I jump through all the hoops, and I get it. But unfortunately, my background check takes a very, very long time. So I missed the first summer, which is so incredibly disappointing. But I'm that squeaky wheel, and I just keep calling back. I'm like, hey, it's Leah. I want to come back for next summer. Please don't forget me. And the following summer rolls around, and the internship starts, and I don't hear anything. And I'm still being squeaky. And the very, very final last day that they can possibly take interns, like 2 weeks after everybody already started, I get to start. And I tell them, you can put me anywhere. I'm so proud to be here. I'm so excited. But the way that you're going to get the best work out of me is if you put me doing sex crimes, because I have a lot of experience, psychological experience with this, whether it's with offenders and victims. And, I know that interns can only do so much, but this is where you'll get my expertise. And I become an FBI intern, and I'm with them for a long time, because once you do your full summer, then you can continue to kind of like moonlight during the semester, but with very reduced hours.
Yeah.
So I go to the VA. I'm working there. That's my final year of my PhD. I do the sleep clinic. It's wonderful. And then I finish, and I'm kind of like waiting for the bureau to offer me a job, because that's kind of, if you're doing the internship, if you're doing a good job, if they're happy with you, that's the pipeline for employment. And so I don't hear anything. And I'm like, well, now what? So I decide, well, I'll just take a postdoc. It's not technically a student, but I think that they'd let me still be an intern. So I go take a postdoc for a very brief period of time doing sexually violent predator evaluations. And then I move down there, and I'm there for maybe 3 months. And then the bureau calls, and they offer me a position, and that I have 24 hours to decide.
24 hours.
I didn't know what the job was. I didn't know what the job description was. I just knew it had to do with psychology. And so I took the leap, and I quit my postdoc the next day, and I moved to Washington, D.C. to take a position at our J. Edgar Hoover building as a psychologist, providing services in-house to our agents and our professional staff and our joint task force officers. So that's how I got to where I am today. I think that's the question you asked. I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
very
know, but I'm
verbose.
super happy you answered it the way you did, because very fascinating path. And, on this podcast, we talk about life, leadership, and wellness.
Yeah.
And I love some of those life and leadership lessons you learned there. The one that you said, being a squeaky wheel.
Oh, that
In
is
life,
me.
in life, people are busy. Here's the reality,
Mhm.
right? People are busy. And so if you really want something, you need to be a squeaky wheel. You need to follow up. Whether we're talking about young 20 somethings, you're at your first apartment and you need something fixed. You need to be calling your apartment manager on a daily basis, being
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah.
Hey, it's just Chris again.
Leah again.
Yeah, I really
Hi.
appreciate it. That one thing you guys did yesterday, you guys took care of the dumpster. Thank you so much. My air conditioner's still out, has been out for a week now, and it's 90 degrees. Whatever it
Yeah.
is in life, I learned it in the Air Force. I got orders to Korea, and I
Mm.
was supposed to be in a controlled tour as an instructor at Lackland Air Force Base. And so I went to my
Okay.
chief, and my chief goes, "Hey, Chris, not a big deal. I'm going to get those canceled." And I was like, "Cool, sounds good to me." And I went back to being focusing on my job, right? And I
Huh?
didn't say anything to my chief, because what did he say? It's not a
He's
big
gonna
deal,
take care of
Chris.
it.
I'm going to take care of it.
Yeah.
Didn't follow up with him at all. And then the orderly room calls me and says, "Senior Military, you need to get your butt in here and sign for your orders." It's like, no, the chief was going to take care of that. And they were like, "Well, the chief hasn't taken care of it, and today's the deadline. Come sign for the orders now." And so I pop into the chief's office. I'm, "Hey, chief, those orders to create," and I could see on the look in his face, he forgot. He straight up forgot. Now,
Ooh,
in
it's a
in
big
the
thing to forget about.
in the big picture of my life story, I'm so happy it happened because of circumstances that took place because of me going to Korea and while I was in
Right.
Korea and all of that stuff. But the lesson that I learned after that is, respectfully, be a squeaky wheel.
Hmm.
Be a
Hmm.
squeaky. If it means something to you, be a squeaky wheel, because you're going to make it mean something to someone else. If for no other reason, to get you to get off their back.
Exactly.
So you're
Yeah.
performing these services in-house. You've
Yep.
said this a couple times, and I want to ask just because I've never heard of this before. I've never heard of a psychologist that can prescribe medication. So what's different
Yes.
about your education that empowers you to have that piece?
Thank you for asking. Yes, this is something that's very special. Thank you, FBI, for paying for my degree. So they paid for me to go back to school, and I have a postdoctoral master's degree in clinical psychopharmacology, an MSCP, and there are only about 5, as I speak right now, maybe 6 programs across the United States that allow this. We are getting bigger and bigger. There are a handful of states, and actually the military allows it too, allows psychologists to prescribe. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but it makes a lot of sense that we would be able to prescribe with this additional extra knowledge. So my schooling was an additional 2.5 year postdoctoral master's degree, meaning that I was already a psychologist, and you can't join a program like that if you're not already a psychologist, already practicing, kind of having some work under your belt before you can enter a program like this. And then it's 2.5 years of very heavy instruction on biological mechanisms, chemical mechanisms, general pharmacology, and then very specific psychopharmacology. And then there's a national exam that you have to pass. So I went through hell for a couple of years to be able to prescribe and to jump through all the hoops and to become licensed as my technical term is a medical psychologist.
Okay.
So I'm so glad that you asked, because there's not a ton of us out there, but it is something. And I think, COVID, good or bad, is pushing for more people to seek services and to seek mental health services. And I think that COVID is probably one of the things also that kind of pushed us even further as far as psychologists. Like we see you very regularly. We know how you're doing. We
Yeah.
know what it looks like when you're having a bad day or a good day. And we've probably had a very long relationship with you versus someone, maybe we'll say like a traditional psychiatrist, who maybe sees you for 10 minutes every 6 months and just goes off of your word, asks maybe a very standard set of questions, and then here you go, you're on your way with your prescription, and I'll see you in another 6 months. Now, that is reductionistic. However, it would make a lot of sense that psychologists are allowed to prescribe after obtaining this additional very heavy pharmacology and psychopharmacology knowledge. And I'm very much in favor of this. And I'm actually a professor on the side too, where I'm trying to help future prescribing psychologists learn the ropes and everything that comes along with that.
Well, I'm just going to speak about that from the patient perspective, because I'm not even 2 years out from being diagnosed with PTSD,
Hmm.
PTSI, and I do have different clinicians, right? I have a master's level mental health professional who I really enjoy, great
Yep.
relationship with her. And then I have my psychiatrist that I meet with for the medication management.
Yep.
And they're both within the VA system. And so they can both see the notes, which I like,
Yes,
right?
which is
Because
great.
I
It's a great
want,
system.
yeah, I want my psychiatrist to be in the know. But how beautiful would it be? Because I have seen a PhD psychologist as my mental health professional before,
Hmm.
but she couldn't prescribe me. But that was the person I was meeting with twice a month or once a month or however often needed.
Yep.
And the psychiatrist, like you said, it's very brief. And thankfully, I'm in the process right now of I've been on a prescription that has worked well with me, and we're in the
Good.
process of trying to step down from that. So it's in I think an easier maintenance one. But if you're in the process of you and your doc or psychologist or whatever their title, psychiatrist, hasn't found the right medication for you, that could be really difficult. I mean, and I'm sure those folks are
Yes.
probably meeting more often with their psychiatrist than what I do, but trying to dial that in is such a challenging thing.
There's a challenge on a lot of different fronts whenever it comes to the traditional way that psychiatry is. And I do think that a lot of people meet with them maybe once a quarter. That would be considered frequent. But I think that there's just so much that a psychologist or a mental health professional picks up on whenever we're seeing you on a regular basis and we're spending 45 minutes to an hour with you, and we're really getting to understand your story and who you are and how you're responding to things and what are your triggers. And medication is very much an art. Yes, there absolutely is science to it. However, there's so much trial and error because we have a whole
Yes.
entire class of antidepressants, but which one is going to be good for you, Chris? And
Yeah.
once we find the one, okay, well then what's that sweet spot for dosing and what time for the dosing? And I think that there's so much that comes into it that if you're only seeing that person once every several weeks or several months, that you will spend more time floundering, for lack of a better word, than getting to a place where if you're working with someone who it's a one-stop shop, I think you will be in a better place quicker. That is my own biased opinion.
Well, as again, I'm going to speak from a patient, and I haven't experienced this, but though, and I've had great relationships with my psychiatrist, and none of this is to detract from the work that they did with me.
Yeah.
But my counselor, whatever title they have, whatever education level they have, they're the ones that are doing the modalities with me, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
cognitive processing therapy or
Yeah.
EMDR or CBT, all these different things.
Yeah.
And I like that whole human approach.
Mhm.
Everything from my sleep that I'm getting to the
Yes.
fitness level I'm doing to the stuff I'm journaling about to the medicine to the therapy modalities. And when I have a person that knows that full picture versus me meeting with my psychiatrist and trying to catch them up, like,
Right. And
Chris,
it's like a 10-15 minute session.
right, like how are you doing? Oh, well, I got a lot to tell you,
Where do
like,
I begin?
yeah. And thankfully I had one psychiatrist. I had a window after I got out of the PTSD treatment center, and I didn't have a mental health professional for a short period of time. Like, I was trying to find one. And
Yeah.
thankfully the psychiatry office was total rock stars, and they were meeting
Good.
with me on a weekly basis for an hour a session,
Wow.
pretty much
That's
doing
impressive.
psychotherapy with me, carrying me through that gap before I landed with the mental health professional I finally found. But let's get off of my story. So
No, but I just want to say
you
thank you
go
for
ahead.
asking because I think that a lot of people don't know what that is. They've never heard of it. And I'm glad to be that squeaky wheel in this instance where we're trying to get more states on board and more psychologists to be aware of what this is and how they can get on board because I think that there's only good things to come from this.
Now, now that you say that, you said states. How does that work for you? Because I know with a lot of mental health professionals, you have to be licensed in the state that you're providing services. You're providing services to the FBI. I have some here in the Tri-Cities. I've worked with them. That's a lot. Now, you may not be connecting with agents and staff from around the entire country, but how does that work for
No, I
someone like
do.
you? So how does that work then? How do you connect with them, and how does
When it
licensing?
at the federal level, and this I can only speak for the FBI, I have to be licensed as a psychologist in a state. I'm licensed in several, but I have to be licensed in a state. Then
Okay.
the federal government recognizes my license, and then the parameters that I work under are I can provide services to any federal employee or family member also falls under that umbrella and task force officer no matter where they are. So if they're in my state, if they're in another state, or if they're across the globe at one of our legots, I do all of it as long as I'm a federal employee, they're a federal employee, and I have a license that works with the federal system. And so that's how that works. With regard to prescribing, that's kind of another ball game, but they do allow that in the military. So several places have already figured that out, as well as Indian Health Service. And so the Bureau, we have yet to figure that out, but it should work the same way. And that is if you're licensed as a prescribing psychologist in a state, then they have the privilege to be able to pull it up and use that in with every federal system. But I only prescribe in one specific state right now in accordance with my license.
That makes sense. Okay. Hey, let's get to this
Yeah,
if sleep were a drug.
let's do it.
Yeah. So, like, I'm excited for this to come out in October because I'm excited to read it. Talk to us about some of these foundational things, and you can really start wherever you're at. I mean, my mind's going, give us some of the foundations. Maybe we need to talk just before that. Maybe let's talk about what happens while we sleep. I think that's a good starting point. What's going on when we go to
Yeah.
sleep at night, and why is this so important?
So, whenever we sleep, and I'm going to talk about the normal, average, healthy sleeper. So, someone who is awake during the daytime and they're sleeping at night, and hopefully they're giving themselves an ample opportunity. When we're talking about adults, ages like 19 to 64, because I have a very specific graph that I normally show, when we're talking about that particular age category, we want between 7 to 9 hours. That's what we want. Because a lot of people have heard this myth about 8 hours or this or that. 7 to 9 hours for the normal, average, healthy adult. Now, during that period of time, your brain should be cycling through different stages of sleep. So we'll start with someone who is awake and alert. Then you start to have that wave of sleepiness come over your eyes are starting to droop. You're starting to get some of those head nods. And then we're moving into a very light stage of sleep where we can hear things. We can easily be woken up. We may say, I wasn't sleeping. That's where we're in light sleep. And then again, normal, average, healthy sleeper without any type of sleep disorder, we're going to be moving into deep sleep, also known as slow wave sleep. And I like to think of deep sleep, and this is simplistic, as being very, very important for our body and for physical restoration. So we spend the biggest chunk of our deep sleep in the early portion of the night as you're falling asleep. But then we will cycle into REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. And that's because the way that we found out that people are in REM is whenever you look at someone who's sleeping, their eyes are closed and their pupils are darting back and forth. That's how we know that they're in REM. Now, REM is, I like to think, much more mentally restorative. We are working on problem solving. The information that we got during the day, we are integrating it into our existing neural networks. We're being creative. You know, whenever we say sleep on it, that's how sometimes we wake up and we suddenly have the answer to the problem we've been working on. We're also emotionally detoxing and kind of getting ourselves ready for another day of being a social creature. So there's a lot of different things going on. But one super cool thing about REM sleep is that during REM, the body is completely paralyzed. And the reason for this, you're shaking your head, you know this, the body should be completely paralyzed. There are some people who this is a disorder for them. And that is called REM atonia. And the body, the Mother Nature does this because, and obviously your organs to be able to continue breathing air and to keep you alive still function, but your muscles are paralyzed so that you don't act out your dreams.
That'd be a
which
problem.
Yes, especially for our first responders and for our military, right? Like whatever is happening in your dreams, whether it's an exact replay or, you know, whatever you're processing through, that could be extremely dangerous for you to jump out of bed and, you know, attack your partner or whatever. There could be a lot of dangerous things that are
Run out
happening.
into the street,
Run out into the street, jump
Yeah.
into your car, grab a knife. Lots of different scary things could be happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're very grateful for REM atonia. But when someone is in REM sleep, if we put electrodes on their head and we also took someone who was awake and alert and problem solving and we put electrodes on their head and we looked at the brain waves, you would see that the brain waves look very, very similar.
Wow.
So this is why we call it paradoxical sleep, and that the body's totally paralyzed, but the brain is super, super active and it's busy. So that's just one cycle. What I just talked about, that's one cycle. And your body takes 50 to 90 minutes to get through a cycle. And if you're giving yourself ample opportunity to sleep, you should go through 4 to 5 cycles a night. As we get closer and closer to when our alarm clock is going to go off, that's when we have the biggest chunk of REM. So that's going to be important. Now, one of the things that I like to talk to people about whenever I go and do sleep lectures is that if I had a penny for every time I said, I wish I had more hours in the day, I could retire now. And I imagine that there's a lot of other people out there who feel the same way. But somehow we are all magicians and we make more time in the day. And the way that we do that most often is by cutting sleep. Whether that is in the first chunk of the night of, oh, I'll just stay up later and I'll knock out these emails, or, oh, I will set my alarm for an hour earlier and I'll get up and I'll bake all those brownies for little Jimmy's bake sale.
Yeah.
So either way you slice it, we're doing a disservice to ourselves. So the biggest chunk of deep sleep is happening as we fall asleep in the early hours of the night. And then our biggest chunk of REM sleep is before our alarm clock goes off. So if you decide, I'm just going to stay up later, well, then your physical health is definitely taking a toll, because that's when your blood pressure should go down, that your blood vessels should get a rest, that, you know, a lot of people have issues with high blood pressure and hypertension. Well, that goes hand in hand with sleep deprivation and not getting enough sleep. And when I say sleep deprivation, I like to ask my audience this question of if they know what sleep deprivation actually means, because I think that we toss that word around, or maybe we think of it as being really extreme, or you haven't slept for days. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine says that sleep deprivation is less than 6 hours of sleep.
Ooh.
I should have asked you first. I'm sorry. Darn it.
No,
I
that's
should have
okay.
asked you.
That's okay. Yeah. How many of my listeners right now, how many of you had less than 6 hours of sleep last night?
That's normally how I will start my lectures, is asking people, okay, who slept 9 hours a night? And normally I may get like one hand, and then who got 8, who got 7, and then we go down and down and down. And as I go into smaller numbers, I get more hands, and just talking about why this is such a problem, right? Like it's increasing our risk of cardiovascular problems hugely,
Yeah.
also increasing our risk of stroke, also increasing our risk of neurodegenerative disorders. So this is probably my favorite fun fact, and I'm doing air quotes for people who are just listening. When you sleep, your body does lots of incredible things, but my favorite is that the brain shrinks up and it allows cerebral spinal fluid to come up from the spinal cord. I used to call it a brain wash. I don't call it that anymore. I call it a brain car wash now.
Okay.
And it comes through and it just kind of gives a little scrub and it washes away all the junk, because all day long, just like other things, we get some gunk building up, misfolded proteins, toxins, free radicals, just crap building up. And so the cerebral spinal fluid comes in, gives the brain this nice little car wash, and takes away all that junk and removes it from the body as waste. That process can only happen at night. And that process
Yes.
is incredibly important, because when we're not allowing our body to do that, that's starting to gunk up the system and it's gumming up the works. And when that happens, then we start to see things like plaques and tangles and beta amyloid. And this is where I like to ask my listeners, where have you heard these words before?
My teeth, at least the plaque one.
That is a very good answer. I haven't gotten that one before.
Okay.
But you're not wrong. Plaque does grow in your teeth. But
Yeah.
when I'm talking about this instance of the brain, the plaques, the tangles, the beta amyloids, and the tau's, that is most often under the umbrella of dementias, of Alzheimer's disease.
Oh. So we're increasing our risk ultimately of developing early onset of dementia and Alzheimer's by
Yes.
by having bad sleep hygiene.
Yes. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying this is a cause and effect. I'm saying that there are other lifestyle factors, there are genetics, there are different things that you can do to put
Yes.
yourself in a better position. And one of those is getting enough sleep every night.
Yeah. Well, so let's say here's the deal, and this is something I did not drink alcohol in my 20s. I
Wonderful.
didn't drink it in my 30s. This little thing happened in 2019 and 2020. I don't know if you're aware of it, if it happened near you or not, but it was called COVID, and we had nowhere to
Never
go.
heard of it.
Yeah, nowhere to go for weeks and months on end.
Mhm.
And so I developed a little drinking habit, like drinking
Ah,
15 plus shots of tequila every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, right? And actually,
mhm.
I say night. I would start at lunchtime, and that was whenever I ate a sandwich. So if I ate a sandwich at 10:30 in the morning, that counts
Oh,
as lunch,
lunch.
right?
Okay.
And what was happening to me when I was consuming alcohol, I would knock out, Doc. I would
Yep.
absolutely knock out. What was
Yep.
actually happening to me during my sleep cycle?
We wouldn't call that sleep. And I have a chapter on this, and I say there's a difference between sleeping and passing out. And I don't mean to be mean about it, but that's really what the difference is. That is not real sleep. That is extremely artificial, especially when we're talking about the degree that you're talking about, right? I think that there are probably a lot of people who are listening who are like, oh, it's fine. I have 3 beers. I'm not nearly to the degree that he's talking about. So it's fine, right? No, I don't want to be this person, but I'm going to tell you the facts and then you do with it what you can, because
Be
you
the
can't
person.
unknow.
We need to hear what you're about to say, so bring it.
The best possible thing you can do is just cutting out alcohol. That's the best possible thing that you can do, because alcohol wrecks your sleep in lots of different ways. One thing that people say is alcohol makes me sleepy. Yes, it does. It's a sedative, it is a depressant. That is its job. That's what it does. It starts to shut down various different parts of the brain. However, whenever we get into a state of sleep, we're not getting good quality sleep. It's not restorative. It's blocking us from getting good REM sleep. It is very fragmented. It is just very crap quality sleep is what we're ending up with. And also, Alcohol is a diuretic, so we're also getting up more times to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night as well. So it's just extremely fragmented compared to the sleep that we talked about a little bit earlier, as far as moving through light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, and cycling through beautifully various different times throughout the night. With alcohol, it does not look like that. It is extremely artificial. And because we are not getting into these deep restorative stages of sleep, so one of the examples I'm going to give you is, in the daytime, we have so much information coming in at us, and the brain doesn't need to hold all of that, and it shouldn't hold all of it, but we do need to figure out what's important. So some things that will come in and they'll be important will be kind of go to our hippocampus. And you can think about it as like the inbox. Like, this is something that's important, but it's hanging out in short term. We need to figure out where it needs to go. So at night during REM sleep, that is when it takes the information that we want to move into long-term storage, and it decides, okay, where does this need to go? How does it integrate with what I already know? Like, where can we fit it into this like web of knowledge that we've already got?
Yeah.
And when we're drinking alcohol, that process just really is happening very, very poorly, if we can say it's even happening. But one interesting thing that I saw in a study was that, and this was about college students, but we can apply it to lots of people because college students are learning, that's their job.
Yeah.
So they learned something on night one, and then 2 nights later, so on night three, they drank alcohol, and they were trying to determine, were they able to put that information where it needed to go. 3 nights later, night one, they didn't drink, night two, they didn't drink, but night three, they did. And showing that alcohol has such an impact, where these folks, compared to people who just didn't drink at all, were having problems being able to put that information into the existing neural networks and figure out where it needed to go.
Yeah.
So it's just really impacting our ability to do lots of different things, but that's just one example.
And I know the folks that are listening to this channel, you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. Equipping yourself with the facts, with truth, so that you can make better decisions. If you want to have an adult beverage on Saturday night, then have an adult beverage on Saturday night, but do it knowing the consequences. You're not going to get as much quality sleep, especially if you go and have 10 of them, 10 of those adult beverages. And so what do you do Sunday night then? Are you going to double down and have another 10? Or are you going to know, I know last night I did not have quality sleep, and so I'm going to double down on Sunday night, and I'm going to make sure I don't drink any alcohol because I need that restorative sleep. I robbed myself of it last night. And just equip yourself with the facts so that you can make better decisions for yourself. I wasn't ready. Go ahead.
I think something that we need to talk about, and probably something that you experienced, was, okay, I'm drinking, I'm getting poor crap sleep.
Yeah.
Then what am I doing in the daytime? Am
Caffeine.
I loading up with caffeine, with energy drinks, with anything that's going to give me some boost of energy? Then when it's time to lay down, a lot of people don't know how long caffeine stays in the body, which this is very important. Caffeine, I think a lot of people are like, sip, little bit of a buzz, and then it goes away. Okay, no, that may be how it feels, but that's not actually what's happening physiologically in your body. So when you have caffeine, and I'm going to do a little example. I have a mug for people who are just listening, and this is probably just a standard, I don't know, like 16 ounce.
That's what I was thinking, 16 ounces.
And with caffeine, it has a half-life. And for just general purposes, we're going to say 4 to 6 hours is what we're going to say. There will be some people out there who are very slow metabolizers. There will be some people who are very ultra rapid metabolizers. Most people fall in the middle, so we're going to talk about that. That's 4 to 6 hours. So say, for example, that I woke up at 6 a.m. and I drank this whole 16 ounces. 6 hours later at noon, I still have half of that amount of caffeine working in my system and exerting its effects of keeping me awake and alert. Half-life continues to work 6 hours after that, 6 p.m., I still have a fair amount of this caffeine rocking and rolling in my system. Now that's assuming that all I had today was one 6 ounce or 16 ounce cup of coffee. And I didn't also have some soda at lunch. And I also didn't have an energy drink in the afternoon, or I didn't have a cup of coffee with my dinner. So just remember that caffeine hangs out for a very long time, because I have a lot of people who tell me, oh, I lay my head down and I just can't go to bed. I wonder why. And there's a lot of different reasons why, but one very common culprit is caffeine. So then maybe that's where the alcohol comes back in. Well, it will help me rest. It'll help me relax. It'll help me feel sleepy. And then eventually we continue this cycle. And then maybe we decide, oh, well, I heard this thing about alcohol and it not being good for sleep. I should probably cut that out. And then we get to a point where I don't know how to do that. My body doesn't want to do that. My body doesn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's important, again, recognizing what's going on and then making. So in the book, if sleep were a drug, what are some protocols that you recommend? Since we're talking about caffeine right now, first of all,
Yeah.
do you drink coffee or other
I
caffeine?
don't.
You don't love it. So
I
that's a
don't.
choice. That's a choice you've made. If you're talking with someone that's like, Doc, I'm still going to drink coffee, what recommendation would you have? Because I do consume coffee. What recommendation
Yeah.
would you have for me so that I can have better sleep hygiene? When should I cut off my coffee?
And let me be clear. I only answer this question because you asked me. I don't put that out on display, but
Okay.
I've never been a coffee drinker, a caffeine drinker, but I also very much prioritize sleep too.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there, but I am not under the impression like everyone, like we're in such a culture with coffee and caffeine and energy drinks and this and that
Yeah.
pre-workout. I am not under the illusion that there are other people out there like me. There's a select few, and it is what it is. So I assume that most people are very heavy caffeine users. With that being said, a few tips that I can give you are whenever you wake up, a lot of times people like want to roll over and have their coffee pot like on their nightstand.
That's
That
not
is not
normal.
going, that's not going to do you a whole lot of good.
I'm just joking. It's not there. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, sure. Let's see.
It's not, I promise. It's in the kitchen.
So, whenever we roll out of bed, whenever we're waking up, our adrenaline and our cortisol are naturally high because that's what gets us out of bed, gets us moving, gets us ready for the day and motivated to get dressed, brush your teeth, get to work on time.
Yeah.
So that's naturally happening, but that will start to taper off. And at the 90-minute mark, after you've been awake, 90 minutes later, that's the best time to have caffeine because those chemicals are naturally dropping off, and that would be the best point to have some caffeine to get a boost. Now, remember what we talked about half-life. There will be some people who know that they're sensitive. There will be some people who aren't sensitive. For me, I'm someone who's very sensitive. So if I was going to have something, I also need to keep that in mind too. But
Yeah.
for a general rule of someone who's going to go to sleep, say like 9, 10, 11 o'clock, cutting off caffeine 10 hours before your planned sleep time.
I like that.
That may seem like, wow, geez, that's really early. Normally it's like the early afternoon for people, but it's so that we can get the caffeine metabolized and out of your body so that when
Yes.
it's time to lay down, you're not wired.
Yep. I like that. So waiting 90 minutes after initially awake is probably the best time to introduce it if
That's
you're
the
going
best
to
bang for your buck.
if you're going to choose to consume caffeine,
Yep.
and then making sure that we're cutting it off 90 minutes before. Hey folks, if you guys need a warm beverage in the afternoon, there's all kinds of wonderful teas out there that are non-caffeinated. Honestly, I like to enjoy Element sometimes in the afternoon. There's a hot water, chocolate one that's just super tasty. Lots of other non-caffeinated, non-other drugs that still give you a tasty beverage. What other recommendations would you say kind of in the morning hours? Are there any other things that we can do in the morning to set us up for when we lay our head
Yes.
down at night?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things, and you don't have to break the bank on this, I would say don't spend more than like $20. But one of my favorite things, and it's a huge game changer. People, when they come and see me and they hear me talk about this, and then like later they'll see me again, they'll be like, oh, you were right. A sunrise alarm clock, whether it's a standalone or if you're someone who likes aesthetics like me, I have a special light bulb that just screws into the lamp that I already have, and I control it with my the robot who shall not be named because she's going to go off, or I can also do it with my smartphone. And what I do is, say for example, if I want to get up at 6 a.m., I will set it for 5:50, so 10 minutes before, but there's all kinds of settings. You can do it exactly how you want. And it just starts on a very low brightness level and it mimics the sunrise. And it gets brighter and brighter and brighter until it's your desired 6 a.m. wake up time or whatever you've selected. And I think that makes such a huge difference waking up, whatever kind of sleep setting you have. Right now in the place that I live, I actually don't have any windows in my bedroom, which makes it very hard to wake up. So this has been a game changer for me. But it just helps also if you're someone who wakes up really early in the morning. I went through a very long period of my life where I was waking up at 5 because that's just what time I needed to get moving to get to work on time.
Yeah.
Or if you're someone who lives somewhere where the sun, especially in the winter months, doesn't come out until much later, this is a very inexpensive game changer that can really help you just get up, get out of bed, and get your day started rather than waking up in complete darkness, fumbling around, feeling confused. I think that that's a great option for people.
I love it. Let's continue with the sleep hygiene setup. So,
Yes.
if you have more things in the morning, feel free to share. Or as we move through our day, what are a few other tools that people can do that are simple that they can implement to promote
Yeah.
higher quality sleep?
Another thing that I want to talk about that's free and that's relatively easy is within the first hour of waking up, if you can, get some natural sunlight. And you may think, oh, I'm not a morning person, or like it's cloudy outside, or oh, it's kind of cold outside. Even if it's cloudy, still go outside because cloudy sunlight is still better than nothing, but it's actually still incredibly bright whenever we actually measure it in terms of lux. So I would say going outside within the hour of waking up, just being outside for a few minutes, taking your sunglasses off and letting that light, don't burn your retinas, but letting that light in through your eyes because then it travels back to the suprachiasmatic nucleus that travels back to the pineal gland, which is responsible for the release of melatonin. So it will tell the brain, shut it off. Time to be awake, time to be alert. And this is also going to strengthen your circadian rhythm in that later, many hours until the evening, then your brain starts to realize, okay, sun setting, time to get sleepy, time to release the melatonin. And I would say with that, if you have the luxury of being able to, if you can only pick one of those, I would say the sunlight in the morning is the most important. If you have the luxury of being able to do both of these, which would be watching the sun set as well, I think that that's also important for just orienting your brain and your body because our strongest circadian rhythm um, anchor is light. And
Mm,
if we're able to watch the sunset, and I'm someone, especially it's summertime now, I try not to use artificial light where I can. So I just open up all of my blinds and I just naturally watch the sunset. And I find that my body gets sleepy as the sun sets. So here it's normally sets around like 9:15. And I would say that that's a nice time for me to start to feel sleepy and to go to bed. I know that everyone is going to have different schedules, but I really like that natural sunlight because again, if we're thinking back to our caveman ancestors, they knew that it was time to be awake when the sun came up and they knew it was time to go to bed when the sun went down. And we still very much are neurally programmed in this very ancient circuitry way.
yeah, yeah. Our bodies were like that for thousands, millions of years, and now we have this artificial light that disrupts it. So, just to
Exactly.
spotlight that again. Don't stare at the sun in the morning, folks. That's not what Dr. Kaylor was saying. But just being outside where you're not having those sunglasses or windows that are filtering the light will help set our circadian rhythm and increases the likelihood of us feeling tired the same time every night and getting on that system.
Yes.
I
And if
love
you
it.
can pair your workout with being outside in the early morning sunlight, like bonus points, that's fantastic. But I realize that that might not be the luxury that a lot of people have. So if it's only just a few minutes, better than nothing.
Yeah. This morning when I did my workout, I did it with my regular glasses on and not my sunglasses because I'm
Mhm.
aware of this early morning sunlight
Good job.
exposure, and it's the only time that I work out without my sunglasses on.
Yeah.
Because I like having my sunglasses on, but I have learned this before, and so I like wearing those. What other things can we do to continue with this setting up? Maybe a few more things that we can do to set up a better sleep hygiene.
Yeah, I think that if we're kind of going off like dimming, watching the sunset, like you just mentioned, we have the ability to have artificial light anytime that we want it. And it's overheads, it's lights, it's screens, it's TVs, it's iPads, it's phones. And so being selective about when we use these things and when we cut them off, I know that there's lots of different filters as far as turning the brightness down as much as possible. So I would say the most ideal thing is 1 to 2 hours before bed, no screens. is that realistic? I get that it's not for a lot of people. So perhaps what you do is dim the lights in your environment instead of having all of your brights on. So even if you don't have a dimmer switch, that's okay. Maybe you use a small lamp instead of all of your overheads. Recently, I've talked to a couple journalists and they want to know about wearing sunglasses in the house at night. And that's an option for you as well. But I would say just being cautious about screen use, because a lot of times when we're using a screen, and this may or may not show up, but like
It
my
does.
phone
Yeah.
is super close to my face. And when we are, especially when we're using a phone or an iPad or a tablet, it's very close to our face. It's very bright. I would say turn down the brightness as much as you can. There are filters out there, and there are even some accessibility features where you can turn the brightness down even further. Those are features that I use on my phone, but I also do try and practice what I preach. So trying to get away from that and having a wind down routine that has other things that are not screen dependent or very little screen dependent. And I think that that rolls into having a wind down routine, right? Whenever it comes to being a first responder or law enforcement or just a member of the general public, life is so busy and we are go, go, go all day long. And a lot of times we just want to collapse face first onto the bed and sleep. That normally doesn't work very well unless you're supremely sleep deprived, which a lot of us are. However, a lot of times people find that when they go face first and try and fall asleep immediately, that then their brain is like, let's think about everything. Let's think about that embarrassing thing that you did in the third grade. You remember that?
Oh my gosh,
And
yes.
your brain just starts to light up and you think about all the world's problems and that weird thing you said in that conversation that one time. And so instead of go, 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 and then trying to just collapse, we need to have some type of wind down routine. And it's going to look different for every single person, what it is that they find relaxing and not stress inducing. But some things that we might do that are going to help us, like taking either a hot shower or a hot bath, that's going to help, as weird as it sounds, drop your internal body temperature, which your internal body temperature does need to drop 1 to 2-ish degrees in order for optimal sleep. So that's one super easy thing that I hope you're already doing. But you could do things like listening to a podcast. You could do some stretching. For me, what my wind down routine normally looks like is I turn off almost all the lights. I put on some soothing ocean music, and then I have like a set like yoga routine that I do that has some deep breathing. And I'm telling you what, like even if I'm not tired before I start this like 15-minute like yoga sequence, I
Yeah.
am yawning by the time it's finished and then I just crawl right into bed. And I think that your wind down routine can be as simple as you want it to be. You know, I'm sure that a lot of people listening think that, oh, I have all these things that I need to do. So maybe it's just turning down the lights and listening to soothing music while you pack your kids' lunches for the night, but just doing it in a soothing and mindful manner. Same thing with picking out your clothes for the next day. So it doesn't have to be this 1 hour of taking a luxurious bubble bath and you're not doing anything else and you're lighting candles. It can be whatever it is that you want it to be, but if you're going to have the best possible chances of winding down and going to bed and falling asleep in a timely fashion, you need to have some type of wind down routine. I feel strongly about that.
Yeah. For me, it's that cold bath, a short journal,
Yes.
and there's whether you want to go out and buy the 5 minute journal, the 7 minute journal that has some gratitude practices. I have
Yes.
one that one of my daughters was doing that just has like a little sentence, and it's a 5 year journal, and so you just do a little prompt. It's
Ah,
nothing major, but it's kind of
yes.
fun. And then I read a history book.
Okay.
Right? This is not a thriller. This is
Yeah.
not going to get my brain going of,
Boring.
oh my gosh, who did it? I read and I really enjoy Revolutionary War and Civil War time period. So I always have a history book next to my bed with a red light, uh,
Yes. Very good.
light. So I'm not getting that white light.
Hmm.
And I read it. I'll read a chapter. I'll read a paragraph. It really depends on when I can no longer keep my eyes open.
Hmm.
And I usually lay that down and I knock out. But it's almost
Yes.
like you said, sometimes I'm not feeling super tired
Hmm.
and I go through the routine. Walk into my bedroom, turn off all the lights except for a side lamp. We do the bath, we get into bed, we do the journal, we I start reading, and
Hmm.
usually somewhere around that beginning of the reading time, I'm starting to feel really tired. My brain
Hmm.
knows. My body,
Yes.
hey, this is
We're
time to,
cueing it.
yes,
We're
we're
teaching it.
100%. And before
Yes.
I didn't do any of this stuff. I would just go hard all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even look at my phone in bed. And then,
Yep.
like you said, I'd be like, I am so tired. And you set it down and you're like, oh, I'm about to knock out. And like you said, then you start remembering all this stuff and your brain's like going a million miles per hour and you can't go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Well, a few things that you mentioned that I think I'm so glad you said. I also have, so the same light bulb that I told you about, and you can buy whichever one, but I'm just going to tell you the one that I have is LifeX, Lifx, and it does the sunrise alarm clock feature. But then also at night, I will tell it, turn on, I'll tell my female robot, turn on the alarm or turn on the lamp, excuse me, and then I ask it to turn it to a red shade. And so red is the least disruptive to melatonin production. So I have it on a red feature and then I'll also even dim it. So those are a few things that I do while I'm kind of just doing my last minute things before bed. And I love that you mentioned gratitude journaling. That's something that I do. And it's something that I recommend as the very last thing that you do before bed, because as we, the world that we're living in, but also the way in which we are wired, neurologically wired, is for the negative. And that's just because it has allowed us to continue to
Survive,
survive and to be the
right?
smartest one. And so we are wired for the negative, to always be looking for danger, to be looking for something to be wrong. And it helps us in a lot of different ways. But if we can purposefully, and for gratitude journaling, it can be very simple. Don't spend more than just a few minutes on it. For
Yeah.
me, I try and write down 3 bullet points. Usually it's more, but I just run through my day and think about 3 simple, basic things. But I do try and make it different every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that is important. So it's not always like my family, my dog, my house. It's going to be, oh, I got a chance to talk to an old friend, or, oh, that was a really good piece of news, or like, oh, I'm so glad that I had such a good experience on this podcast. Whatever it is, because I want my brain to highlight on these positive things that happened that day, so that that is the last thing that I'm seeing or that I'm thinking about before I close my eyes.
I love that. I love that. I'm excited about your book coming out. This
Thanks. Me
this
too.
this sleep thing has been such a game changer for me in my life. And I try to talk about it a lot for folks because I hope through repetition they eventually go, you know what, maybe I felt like I didn't have control over this,
Hmm.
Doc. I
Yeah.
genuinely did not have control over this. My kids needed more of me. My wife needed more of me. My employees needed more of me. And what I realized was I was stretching myself so thin that I really wasn't performing in those areas the way I really wanted to. And I didn't feel
Right.
great. And once
Right.
we start saying no, and this is the words I use, I am stingy with my sleep. My best friend in the world asked me to pick him up at the airport at 9:30. And I
Hmm.
told him, absolutely not. He goes, what? Why not? And I'm like, I go to bed at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I don't compromise on that unless I contributed towards your DNA pool. If I contributed towards your DNA pool, I will violate that from time to time when it's really important.
Yes.
Otherwise, I go to bed at 8 o'clock. Like, I mean, that's when the routine starts. That's when I head towards
Yes.
the bedroom, and I'm usually probably asleep close to 9 o'clock with the full routine I do. But we
Yes.
we have to take control of this because you're going to start showing up as a better professional, whatever your discipline is. You're going to start showing up as a better mom, dad, husband, wife, whatever your roles are, best friend.
Yeah.
And I want people to get that. I don't want people to be in the grind and suffering. And I just see it on a lot of people's faces. I think a lot of folks are in the grind, they're suffering, and they don't
Yes.
realize that they're kind of doing it to themselves because of what we've done with this whole thing around sleep.
Yes. And one thing that I need to put out there as a disclaimer is good sleep will not happen overnight. So if you
No.
listen to this podcast, you're so excited, you put together your own wind down routine, you do
Yep.
it for one night and you sleep like shit and you're like, well, they're both full of shit.
They're both idiots.
I'm done with this
Stupid
podcast.
Dr. Taylor and Chris Littrell. I can't believe these two.
Yeah, that like I always set up expectations, and I think that's in like the foreword of my book, is like good sleep will not happen overnight. You need to make changes, and those changes need to be sustained over time. And then, just like your story, you will have control. And the same thing, I practice what I preach. Like my bedtime is also 9 o'clock, to the point where, and I'm relatively young, where my other young friends are like, "Oh my God, you're so elderly." Like they make fun of me about my sleep, and I'm like loud and proud about it. Like
Yeah.
like I sleep great, and I'm happy to shout that off the rooftops, and I'm happy to show you how to do it, but you do have to make changes. And I too am very protective about my sleep and my sleep time, to the point where my parents even make fun of me a little bit about it too.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Hey, Doc, when if sleep were a drug, when your book comes out, what are the ways that people can grab it? How are they going to be able to purchase it?
So it's probably going to be on Amazon, and it's definitely going to be on my website, which is drleahkaylor.com. As far as where I am, I'm trying to put things out onto social media and anywhere like YouTube, TikTok. It's all Dr. Leah Kaylor. Same thing on LinkedIn. And then if you're interested in chatting with me, my email is info@drleahkaylor.com.
All right. Well, folks, I'm going to make that really easy for you for all those social media links and the email address. Look down in the show notes. All of those links will be down there for you for a one-click easy access. Doc, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff with the exception of turning off my freaking phone. Because you know what? When I turn that off, I do create more time for myself.
Yes.
I'm deviating from my normal stick here. It is my greatest commodity, and you've given me some of yours. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was such a pleasure.
All right. Have a great day. Wow, folks, what did you think about my conversation with Dr. Kaylor? I don't remember if I saw her talking on LinkedIn or on Instagram, but when I heard her talking about sleep, I shot her a message. I send messages to a lot of people, folks, trying to get them to come on the show. And I'll be honest with you, I aim high. I've asked presidents and like big time professional athletes and singers to come on the show, and a lot don't respond, but Dr. Kaylor did. And I love what she's doing here in the first responder world. And honestly, folks, whether you're part of the first responder family or not, the truth of what she's talking about can help you in your life. Jamie and I want to hear from you, folks. How are we doing here on the podcast? There's a few different ways for you to communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to come up in your dashboard. You can also rate and review us if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. There's 5 stars waiting on our main page. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating if we've earned 5 stars, folks. If we haven't earned 5 stars, keep your stars. Instead, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let me know how to make it better, future Mighty Monday motivating ideas, or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribes. Take care of each other. God bless.